Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. Here with some NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for both FanDuel and DraftKings Showdown Thursday night slate between the Cowboys and the Bears. If you're not subscribed already, please click that red subscribe button below. That way you're notified of our latest videos. You know the drill, 10-minute video to nail down some of the strategies for tonight's slate. Remember that in-depth analysis and full details for every player, as well as lineup advice for FanDuel and DraftKings for low risk and high risk contests, as well as contests to target, will be in our daily plug on OccupyFantasy.com. Access for members only, so go check that out once this video is done. So let's start. And tonight actually looks like a pretty easy low risk night. And when we say low risk, for those who haven't watched our videos before, we mean contests where you double your money, 50-50s, double ups, head-to-heads, contests along those lines. And what we like to do there is get as much touchdown potential as we can by locking in both quarterbacks, locking in two running backs, try to get one from each side. And the Cowboys have been on a few primetime slates this year, and it's been kind of difficult based on their matchups to play low-risk contests with the pricing of Zeke and Dak. However, not the case tonight against the Bears. So if we look, generally we'll want Zeke or one of the two quarterbacks in our low-risk lineup as the captain tonight on DraftKings. And let's just say we go with Zeke, who's the most expensive player, just to test some things out. So we go Zeke, we go Dak, and we get Mitch to get in our two quarterbacks. That leaves us with, if you can't see, 4,500 left per player. Ideally, we'd want to get in a Chicago Bears running back, whether that's David Montgomery, who's had 15 or more touches in 6 straight games, or you could drop down Tariq Cohen if you can't fit in Montgomery, as Cohen has had at least 4 targets in all but one game this year. Has played between 50% and 60% of the snaps over the last 4 weeks. Pretty decent involvement for him, gives him a pretty safe floor. So either one is advisable here. And then we like to fill in the rest of our lineup generally with defenses and or kickers. However, I think Javon Wims is probably a good option tonight at $3,200. His price still hasn't increased that much. I know he was $200 on the Thanksgiving slate, but given his involvement in the passing game, he's still too cheap in our eyes. 3 games Taylor Gabriel has missed this year. Taylor Gabriel is out again tonight with a concussion. And in those 3 games, Javon Wims has played at least 90% of the snaps in all 3, averaging around 4 targets per game. That's probably a little higher upside and maybe a little safer floor than the 2 kickers listed ahead of him. So you could go Javon Wims. 5,200 left per player. Let's see if we did Montgomery. 2,800. That doesn't do it. You could probably swap Dak and Zeke or Mitch Trubisky into the captain spot to fit in one of the defenses. Cowboys as a 3-point favorite makes some sense, as do the Bears. So there are ways to fit in Zeke, Dak, Mitch, and a Chicago running back. And Javon Wims is probably likely the key. And it's the same thing on FanDuel as well. If we hop over to FanDuel, for some reason, Javon Wims is still 5K. He was 5K on Thanksgiving, still 5K. And that type of involvement, generally we don't like using receivers in low-risk contests because of the positional volatility. However, when someone is underpriced, and especially on FanDuel when it's really tough to fit in high floor plays anyways, he can be a great salary saver. So remember, on FanDuel, because of the half-point PPR scoring, because of the lack of a salary multiplier, you almost always want to do a quarterback in your low-risk lineups, and even in high-risk, it makes sense to load up on quarterbacks. So let's go Dak here, Mitch, and Zeke. And then we fit in Javon Wims. That leaves us with 10K left over. We can go with Tariq Cohen to give us a 4th player, a running back. You could go Brett Maher at kicker to pair with Zeke and Dak. So a couple options. Pinheiro. I mean, definitely some ways to go here if you're looking to fit in the high floor plays on FanDuel for your low risk contests. Definitely possible. So given the options we have, do believe it's a pretty good allocation night for low risk. Most of your allocation tonight should be in these low risk contests. You can always take some shots with high risk, and we'll take a look. Let's go back to DraftKings on what the strategy should be in high risk contests. Now, high risk contests, especially on Showdown where there are really top-heavy prize pools. What you really should be targeting are 100-player leagues on FanDuel and DraftKings. DraftKings, remember, they're called 118-player contests. They're much flatter payouts, much better bankroll boosters for smaller bankrolls. So be sure to check those out. Also includes multipliers, quintuple ups, triple ups, includes satellites, and then any GPPs that you do enter. Now, tonight's total is just 43 points. And if you've listened to any of our videos in the past, I'm trying to think of which video specifically it was, but know that 47 is a key number in NFL totals. It's been determined that X amount of games end up on that number, and that's kind of the medium number between NFL totals this year, 47 points. And if you look at games that are lined below 47 points, expected to score less than 47 points, tonight is one of them with a total of 43. Running backs become the optimal captain choice. They're the highest likelihood of being the optimal captain on DraftKings. So with a low total of 43, we should expect to get Zeke and or David Montgomery and or Tariq Cohen into your captain player pool on high-risk contests on DraftKings. Now, we think Zeke and Dak are going to be incredibly popular tonight. A couple reasons. One, the two highest priced guys. And as simple as that sounds, that really is correlated with captain ownership and overall ownership, especially when they're this much higher priced than the next closest guy. So Zeke and Dak are pretty close together, but then there's a $1,200 drop to Allen Robinson. So we expect ownership to be concentrated here. Also, if you look at the betting percentages, look in the betting markets at the percentage of bets. As of this morning, we're recording this video at 9:45 a.m. Eastern. Dallas is currently receiving 64% of the spread bets, which is a pretty high number. And generally, when one team is getting a lot of action in the betting markets, their players are popular on the corresponding showdown slate. So I think we can see Zeke and Dak take up maybe 50% is too high, but probably nearly half the captain ownership on DraftKings tonight. FanDuel, where quarterbacks are routinely 40-50% owned in the MVP spot, expect Dak to approach that number tonight. Zeke to be right behind him, and then Mitch Trubisky and the rest of the guys will fill in at minuscule MVP ownership. Generally, we don't like recommending quarterbacks for our captain spot. They're overowned, especially in the case of Dak, like Dak tonight, where we know he's going to be 15, 20, 25% captain. Mitch Trubisky, on the other hand, should go under 10% owned as captain, and there are certainly ways where he is the most optimal player in your captain spot on DraftKings tonight. So we don't mind using Trubisky. Underdog quarterbacks that end up going under 10% captain are fine to use in your high-risk captain spot. It's those guys like Dak who end up as one of the highest-owned captains that you want to fade and avoid. All right, so Zeke, David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen, even possibly as the most likely captains. Let's not forget about Amari Cooper either. So we have our underperforming wide receiver list every single week. 3 of those guys were in my FanDuel winning lineups this last week to earn trips to Puerto Rico. 2 of those guys were in my lineups back in week 10 for the 100K win. These underperforming receivers have explosion games. As we talked about on Monday, they're not always going to hit like DK Metcalf. However, when they do hit, it's generally at lower ownership, and when they hit, they've really hit. So Amari, due to the shutdown game versus Stephon Gilmore a couple of weeks ago, his box scores are lacking compared to his opportunity. The last 3 weeks, 21 targets, so 7 targets per game, not bad. 220 air yards, so over 10 yards per target. And he only has 11 receptions for 123 yards and 0 touchdowns to show for it. Much easier sledding tonight, especially considering that cornerback Prince Amukamara is doubtful for the Bears. They'll be starting a much lesser cornerback in his stead. So we like Cooper tonight. I know we say running backs in high-risk captain spots, but Cooper is an exception tonight in a low total game because of his recently underperforming metrics. So I think that about handles it. Remember, FanDuel is a lot different with only 5 players, no salary multiplier, half-point PPR scoring. The quarterbacks are going to be MVPs more often than not. So it's really tough to get away from playing them there in your MVP spot, Dak. But just think about it. So far this season, in the 12 Dallas games this year, Dak has been the Cowboys' highest score only half the time, 50% of the time. That's not even including the other team's scores. So while Dak will approach 50% ownership, I'm not sure he's necessarily worth the 50% ownership in MVP in high-risk contests. Low-risk contests, completely different story. High risk. Still think you wouldn't go Zeke. Probably Mitch, some too. It makes even more sense on FanDuel to use as a captain than it does on DraftKings. And then Cooper and Montgomery as well. All right, that'll do it for today. We appreciate you listening. If you're not already, please follow us on Twitter at OccupyFantasy. We post all of our updates for all of our content over there. Follow me on Twitter at Brian Jester FF. Be sure to subscribe to get our latest videos. Click that subscribe button below. We'd really appreciate that. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions about tonight's slate, need any help, or if you have comments about this video, drop a comment below. We'll reply back to you before the slate starts at 8:20 Eastern tonight. So remember, after you watch this video, after 2 p.m. Eastern, it'll be up on OccupyFantasy.com. Read the Daily Plug. It's our Thursday edition. I write about every single player on the slate, talk about their expectations, where they rank in our model, our real-time player dashboard. And we talk about how to fit these players into your low-risk and high-risk lineups, what strategies to use, and then specifically which types of contests to target for tonight's slate based on all of that information. So appreciate you listening. Good luck, and we will talk to you soon.